Hello everyone, welcome to our review for Godzilla X Kong, the new Empire. Not sure if the X is a bracket in between or if it means kiss or hug, but I'm sure the people can let us know about that. This film follows Godzilla and King Kong, doesn't have that king yet, I'm sure we'll get there eventually, as they unite together against a mysterious villain that's lurking beneath Hello Earth. It stars Rebecca Hall, Brian Tree Henry, Dan Stevens, Kaylee Hottle, and of course Godzilla and Kong. I'm joined here by James, and we will get straight into our review. So James, what are your initial thoughts about this film?
Well, I mean, first of all, yeah, we're not going to talk about spoilers on this one.
Yes.
Yes. No spoilers because I think the embargo drops in like 12 hours. But anyway, for my thoughts, these are the types of movies that they really challenge you as a critic. And this is one where I've tried to understand on how I should articulate my thoughts for this one, because I can't go into Godzilla X Kong and be like, and take it so seriously as if I would with something for like Oppenheimer or Poor Things or The Iron Claw, those kind of movies. They're on completely different planes, and then therefore you have to judge and assess it differently. You cannot assess it the same. And what Godzilla X Kong is it's gigantic, blockbuster, popcorn fun. But it's dumb. Popcorn fun. It's really dumb. It's like the Fast and Furious movies, but only worse. I mean, at least Fast and Furious tries to add a little heart into it. It's not always successful, and it does get a little bit too silly. I guess this franchise is the same thing as like that. So if the goal of these movies is to allow you to jump in front of the big screen, sit down, eat popcorn, have some snacks, enjoy a movie with your friends and family, then it succeeds, because I think it's entertaining at best. But I mean, I'll get into some other thoughts a bit later, but yeah, I think it satisfies on that core, fundamental principle that it is trying to achieve, is just being dumb entertainment and being, something for the big screen, and that's really it. I don't know, how do you feel in terms of that? Do you assess it a little bit more seriously, or is it just that kind of...
I there are movies, where you're just going to switch your brain off and become a potato and watch it, and this is one of those films. Fast and Furious is the other that you mentioned. So this neither exceeded nor met my expectations, but it was just what I needed after a day's work. I just needed something fun and stupid to make me laugh, and there was definitely some of those moments in there. There are some moments in there that you just laugh, and you just can't help but think, how is that possible for something that size to do that fast? It's just absolutely hilarious. So yeah, I think from an entertainment perspective, I was quite entertained by it. It did exactly what I wanted. But as a critic, as you said, this is the fucking stupidest movie, dumbest movie ever. Like, the majority of the plot points were just over-explained in it. They're explaining the lore of certain places, and then the stuff actually happens. And I'm not sure about you, but I also feel as if the human characters are just a waste in these films. They somehow just seem to be getting worse and worse for each film. The only good human characters in the Monsterverse is probably from Kong Skull Island. Their characters in that film is probably the best in this franchise so far, but in this film it was just like, I didn't care about them. I don't care how significant they are or what they're trying to do or how funny they're trying to be. It was just why they're there. Everyone just wants to see Godzilla and Kong. Chuck on some subtitles and let people read what they're trying to grunt and roar about.
Yeah, I mean, like, I do agree with that, and they try this like silly little plot point of how to intertwine the human characters with the monsters through like some sort of telepathy kind of thing, and how they can communicate together. And it's a really silly way to help make the human characters feel more involved. I think the only way for human characters to have any kind of significance in these types of movies is to have them just be in the situation when something's going down, whether it's a big fight or it's all fighting. So they have to be involved in the situation rather than being like the head of monarch and this adopted daughter, and it's just, yeah, it doesn't click. And there's like some other, Dan Stevens' character, all that stuff. They just kind of have no place in this. They waste screen time, in my opinion.
I think so too.
Yeah, because again, there's no payoff to any of these characters that are in this movie. There are no payoffs. And if we get to the leader of the Kong division of Monarch, played by Rebecca Hall, I believe, and her adopted daughter, I mean, there's some nice exchanges there, but it's never really focused on enough for us to actually care. And further to that, there is no kind of plot point or character or anything that the audience can emotionally invest in. There's nothing in this movie where I feel like I had to stick around and foresee. I didn't have to watch any of this movie. Like, there's just no point to watching it. It's just dumb fun. And going back to that, it succeeds in that. But like we have to look at it a little bit deeper and be like, okay, where can this franchise actually go now? Is there any room for this to expand and continue to go on?
I think it can expand. I think it can continue, but not with both Titans in the same film. I feel they need to go individual. I think even though the Godzilla vs Kong and Godzilla X Kong more feel like Kong-centric films than they do as like a joint one, I think Kong needs to get his own one and build up towards him becoming King Kong. Me and Kind discussed this before the film started, is that really the end game for this is for Kong to get that title and then die, because that's what King Kong's about, is he's the King Kong and then he eventually dies. And that's not a spoiler, because that's like almost 100 years of facts and movies to prove the points. So I think that's the way the future goes. I'm not sure how Godzilla fits apart in this. I mean, sure, there's a lot of other monsters that he could come up against, and I'm sure there's new cities that he can absolutely destroy physically and financially. I hate to be an insurer for those cities, or even people living in them. It's just rubble.
Yeah, and this movie had to have like every single landmark in it. Like just the Colosseum, the Rio de Janeiro statue, just everywhere.
The
pyramids, the pyramids. My goodness. I mean, like, this movie just had to include those kind of attractions in there to like make it, I guess, a little more appealing and iconic in some kind of way. Having Godzilla and Kong be around the pyramids and stuff. I think that they're just silly, and I think the Monsterverse has really, really embraced being embraced not being serious, just being fun, popcorn fun, in front, like similar to Fast and Furious. I think they started out trying to build something serious, building a very cinematic universe that took itself seriously, and people could really get on board with it. But then they kind of realized along the way that you can't really have it when it's just monsters, because you need those human characters to be in there. So just to embrace the big, blockbuster VFX overload thing, I think is probably the right direction, even though I personally don't like these movies. Like, I mean, I can say right now that it is fun entertainment. It's dumb, but it's fun. But being honest to myself, I did not like this movie at all. I really, really disliked it. I came out not with a headache, but just kind of like just a fuzziness and blurriness in my mind. Like, you've just seen it. I saw it last night, so I've had time to relax and unwind and decompress from it. But just constant, like, action and loud noises in your face, it was a bit too intense for me. But like, in talking about that, a very VFX heavy movie. How'd you find the VFX in this one?
The main point of VFX I'll get to a bit later, but to answer your question now, I think I feel it's getting worse as I probably should have brought my drink here. My throat's got popcorn stuck in it.
Oh my goodness.
But I feel that the visual effects is like getting worse and worse as each film goes, and the cinematography for each film is decreasing as well. There is just so much visual effects in this, and I understand that a decent part of this film takes place in Hollow Earth, where it is quite CGI heavy, but you can at least like just have simple set pieces where it's just sets or practical locations, and just
Yeah.
call it Hello Earth or something like that. Some of the creatures in it, I thought they were designed quite well. I did it like that, but other than that, yeah, I think it's getting worse and worse and worse. Even Godzilla's atomic breath doesn't look as nice and clean as it did back in 2014. Now, touching back on my comments about cinematography, I feel as if it's just the last two films, Godzilla V Kong and X Kong, has completely dropped the cinematography sort of aspect towards these films. If you remember 2014, you got the halo jump. In Godzilla Skull Island, you got the sun in the background with the choppers flying towards it, and then like Kong just standing up in front of it, and it's just like a silhouette. It really captures scale really well. And even in Godzilla King of Monsters, at the end of that, when he defeats Ghidorah, he's on top of that mountain, he just roars, and it like goes out wide, and you see all the other titans bow down to him.
Yeah.
So those are some like great iconic shots in this franchise, but I cannot think of any from the past two films. So it is a bit sad to see that they're not really doing anything creative with these monsters, because there's so much you can really do cinematography wise to like just make you be like, wow, like these guys are huge. But
Yeah, and I mean, like, even VFX, on top of that, you know, if Fast and Furious franchise, and I hate to keep comparing the two, but if they're going to try and inject a little bit of heart and soul into the characters and the direction that it's moving, then this franchise needs to add another layer to it. It can't just be dumb popcorn fun. We don't try to just throw monsters in there and people will show up. It needs to have a little bit more, and I think exactly what you're saying. It needs to up its game on the technological side of things. It needs to have the VFX need to be top notch for a franchise like this to exist and to enjoy. Because if you are just going to show monsters bashing each other for 2 hours straight, then at least make it look nice. I mean, it's not so hard to ask. And like, yeah, there are a ton of good shots throughout. You know, the Monsterverse. Kong Skull Island has awesome stuff. You know, like the reflection of sunglasses and the explosions. Or do you remember Tom Hiddleston's character with the green smoke flares and shoveling? Yeah, some really cool stuff, and then really simple stuff as well. But you're right, there's none of that in this. In fact, it's like borderline horrible. And capturing scale of these monsters is done really poorly in this one as well, until I guess the final act. But I didn't get a sense of scale of any of the characters in Hollow Earth until, you know, the final act, and then you kind of get an idea, and the camera work doesn't do anything to allow us to differentiate the difference between the size of these animals compared to real world things. So that kind of stuff, it's bothersome, and it doesn't make it enjoyable experience at all. I think, the only time when I could say that the VFX were anything good or competent was in those close-up shots. There's some great stuff during that thing, but I mean, and it's hard not to get into spoilers with this, but this is one animal, or it's some made-up thing that just looks completely unbelievable. It's and it comes around in the last act. The big creature in it. That's all I'm gonna say about it. But it just looks absolutely horrendous, and the design is dumb as well. But yeah, I would say I wouldn't categorize the VFX as awful, but they're certainly not good, and they need to be to a higher standard if they're going to be in these kind of movies where it's going to rely heavily on VFX.
Another thing that annoyed me about this film was the score. I felt that the balance between the score and the soundtrack was all over the place. So we're doing like 80s songs with 80s sort of score type, you know, the Stranger Things synth type of music, and it just didn't quite fit the tone or even the era of this film. It was just like, you should have just done something modern. Like if it was an old timer, possibly it could work a bit better. But the character was quite young when I was playing those songs. It's just like it's just weird.
It's a bit silly. Like when Kong Skull Island had you know, a very similar music. I'm like, oh, they're going for the same kind of thing again. But yeah, Kong Skull Island takes place in a more relevant time.
Yeah.
where those songs are more applicable. So it doesn't make sense for them to do it in this one as well. But yeah, there's nothing notable about the score or soundtrack for this, and it just, I'm disappointed, I guess, in this movie a lot. Again, just to reiterate my final standpoint on it, it's fun, it's entertaining, and it's very, very dumb. It's stupid, and it tries to be a little bit complex, but at the end of the day, I think it's really dumb fun. But I also believe that it doesn't need to be anything more than dumb fun. So I think it succeeds in its main goal, but if we're looking at it from a filmmaking's perspective, I think this fails on nearly every comprehensible level possible in terms of acting, narrative, pacing. Like, I came out of that movie, man, and 2 hours had gone by. I'm like, oh my goodness, I thought that was like 2 hours 20, 2 hours 30. And like everything about it, it doesn't work. So as someone who loves films and sees a lot of them, we need something better from these kind of movies, I feel. But for those people, and there's a lot of those people, perhaps whoever's watching this right now, you may just want to go to the cinema, turn your brain off, relax, and decompress from a busy work week or whatever. And this is the type of movie to do that, and it succeeds in that. So if that's your type of movie, all power to you. But from my standpoint personally, it's not for me.
Yeah, fair enough. So in saying that, what score would you give it? And then I know you're the box office king as well, so what is your prediction of where this, at the end of the run, where its box office will track?
Oh, two tough questions there. I mean, okay, in terms of my score, if I'm gonna try and be an objective critic as much as I guess I can, I would say it's about a 4 point. I'll say 4.5. Personally, it's way lower, but you gotta like think about so many different layers in terms of what the movie's trying to do and what it actually is. If you can't compare, movies aren't made equally. They're made with different intentions, and that's fine. And so this movie, I think it's 4.5 for what it's trying to do. As for box office, right off the bat, I think it's going to struggle to get to 500, but I think 400 to 500 is a safe bet. I think you're looking at around 135 for a worldwide opening weekend this weekend, but I'm not entirely sure on the markets it's releasing. China is a big market for these types of movies. They love this stuff, and it's funnily enough they love Transformers, which is a very, very similar franchise in terms of dumb blockbuster popcorn fun, right? So they seem to really, and China loves Fast and Furious, but they seem to love these kind of movies for some reason. It's all just clicking in my head right now, but that's a key market for it, so we got to see what it's doing there, because China hasn't been the same since COVID in terms of the box office and how big that market was really growing. So yeah, that's my prediction for both box office and my score for the film. What would you give the score for the film on your side?
Well, what I give it is exactly the same as yours. It was, except mine was taken from a bit personal as well. It was the film I needed after a hard day's work, where I could just switch off and just be entertained, and it ticked that box fine. But from the critic side of it, nothing really landed. I was expecting at least something from visually, but I was disappointed in that. And same with sound as well. I think before I went to this film, I messaged Klein and I said to him I sort of wish this film was in IMAX for the sound, and I'm sort of glad it wasn't in IMAX, because the sound was horrendous in this and horrible. So yeah, 4.5 from me, and I think it's a 4.5 for Movie Gains as well. Speaking of Movie Gains, I hope you enjoyed this review wherever you have been watching from, or if you're on Spotify listening from. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below, and while you're down there, just scroll a tad and chuck in a comment of whether you've seen this film and what your thoughts are, or if you want some spoilers, just flick us a DM on either Instagram or X. We'll catch you on our Let's Be Real podcast. We're doing that tomorrow, because tomorrow is Thursday, and they got a little special Easter Monday treat for you guys as well. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. We are Movie Gains. We'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.